And opinions expressed during the related show are those of the show personalities and guest alone, and not those of Vic Canellis Media Group, its parent, affiliates, or stations. VCMG Live is not responsible for any content, information, or opinions expressed. User bears full responsibility for their reliance on such content, information, or opinions.
Welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. With over 20 years of real estate experience and selling over 150 homes a year, Laura Sanders is the #1 RE/MAX agent in the state of Florida for 2021. Join us each week as we discuss how to make money through buying and flipping homes, to renting versus selling, and everything in between. To join the conversation, call in live 888-994-4995, Studio A.
Hi, and welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. Every week we talk about something that helps you to make a little bit of money. You know, today I thought what would be good to talk about is how we can help you circumvent probate. Now, it won't happen in all cases, and it's not relative to every state, but there is a way that we could possibly circumvent probate, and I actually just did it recently. So let's talk about how that can happen. So we're going to welcome Nicholas Fiorello. He is an amazing attorney, and we're going to talk about how to circumvent probate.
Yes.
So a lot of times people quick claim properties before somebody dies, and if you're actually not dead yet and you're living in a home, like you're in a facility, you're getting maybe some kind of a service, you're paying for that like home, like an elderly home, you can't go and quick claim that house to somebody else because that would be illegal, right? Because usually because you're transferring the money, and that's trying to that can be construed as trying to trick the system to not pay for services, because a lot of people will do that to empty people's bank accounts so that then Medicaid will pay for their services and it'll be paid for by. So recently, because we couldn't do that, I actually had a client that we said, let's do a ladybird deed. And I don't think a lot of people know, in this particular instance, it was not their primary, and people get a little confused between the difference between a primary residence and an investment property, and when you should be utilizing that ladybird deed. So, maybe you can go a little bit more into detail for us on this.
Yeah, you can use a ladybird deed pretty much for any property you have. Your homestead will carry over if you use the quitclaim deed on your homestead property. So the protection will carry over. A ladybird deed is a different form of deed. There's regular quitclaim deeds, there's ladybird deeds. What ladybird deeds do is they transfer the property from yourself to yourself, but you take it out of fee simple absolute and put it in a life estate.
Okay, so go slower. So when you say you take it out of fee simple absolute, so correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is that basically you're putting somebody else's name onto the property. However, they have no control of the property.
Yes, but you're keeping and retaining the right and use of the property, but that's only within a ladybird deed. There's two types of deeds, life estate deeds,
okay,
and you have to specify that it's the ladybird deed.
What's the other kind of life estate?
It's a regular life estate deed that is very specific in the language. The language in the enhanced life estate or ladybird deed has language saying without joinder of that remainder who you designate to take the property upon your death.
So it's a remainder man deed.
It's a remainder man deed.
And that's different, it's different than a ladybird deed. How?
Because in a regular life estate deed, the remainder has an interest in the property and can control what you do with the property.
So that's something you probably wouldn't want to do.
In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. Most of the time, no. Most of the time, you want to retain the ability to mortgage, sell, convey, whatever you want to do with that property, and that's what the ladybird deed allows you to do. The ladybird deed allows you to, in your lifetime, control what you do with the property. And then, upon your death, it transfers over to the remainder.
Whoever you put it there.
Or remainders. You can,
right, you can put it, if you have 8 kids, you can put it for 8 kids.
Exactly.
If you have 1 kid, if you have one kid, whoever.
Yeah, and you can designate how they take title. So you can joint tenants with right of survivorship versus tenants in common.
Okay, so that would be interesting. So let's say, actually just recently I had somebody that passed away, and I didn't realize that it could make a difference on how that was taken, because I had to go back and look, because there was 3 siblings. One sibling died before the mother died. So then there was 2 siblings left, but the sibling had a husband. So you had to make sure that it wasn't left to where, what would that be called then? If we were looking, it would be called?
So when you have joint tenants with right of survivorship,
That would go to their husband then?
That would go to that would automatically go to the other person on title. Let's say you have 2 children, you granted the deed to yourself. Let's say we're talking ladybird deed.
Right.
You to yourself in a life estate with your 2 children as the remainders. If you were to pass away, then it would automatically go to those 2, and you
But
name.
if one of them died?
One of them, well, it depends when they die. So if they die prior to you passing away, then it would only go to that one other person that is left as a remainder. If they were to pass away after they were to take title, then it would, if it's joint tenants with right of survivorship, it would automatically transfer to the other person without going to their spouse.
So either way though, if they died before you died, it would still go to the other child?
Yes.
And if they died after, it'd still go to the other
Yeah.
child?
Yeah.
But isn't there a way that you can make it where it would go to that child's spouse?
Tenants in common.
Tenants in
So
common.
if they're holding it in tenants in common, when somebody passes away, it has to go through the intestacy laws of Florida, through a will, through probate, so to speak.
Oh gosh, that's a pain.
In that case.
So that might not be a great idea, but then you're not giving that
Well, usually
spouse
people aren't
their-
protecting the spouse, they're protecting the
child.
spouse of their child, they're protecting their child, or their multiple children. So that's where it favors the joint tenancy with right of survivorship.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, what are some other suggestions when you're doing this ladybird deed?
Well, in general, doing any kind of deed, there's issues that you want to avoid. One, when you have them executed, you want to have them executed properly. You need 2 witnesses that are disinterested in the property,
Okay.
completely disinterested. So my common rule is like stay away from family.
Okay.
Just stay away from any family witnessing the deed, because then you might have interest battles or anything that after you pass away you wanted to avoid that could happen. And then in Florida, actually, starting January 1 next year, witnesses are going to require to put their addresses on any kind of recorded document.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So
Now, does it have to be your home address, or can it be a work address?
notice, an address for notice, to be provided notice. So it could be a work address, it could be your home address. So whatever the post office address that you would receive mail at to get notice.
And is that because now they're looking for people all the time and they need to get in touch with people that have noticed?
I think
Yeah.
so. I don't know the reason behind it, but I have a feeling that's why there might be more contested issues now and stuff like that. But other issues are, not having the property address, not having the folio number, not recording it. Florida is a state where it's a notice state, meaning that if one person were to execute a deed and that deed wasn't recorded, and then they executed another deed dated after both of them properly notarized, but the second one was recorded first, that first one would not be valid anymore.
Oh,
So
wow.
you need to record.
Immediately.
Yeah, immediately.
Now, typically, if somebody came into your office to do this, would you record it for them for a charge?
Yes. So we charge $350 to do a quitclaim deed.
Okay.
That includes the recording fee. So that's the preparation and recording. We, do that for anybody. A lot of the time, just regular quitclaim deeds. People want them going to their trust, going to an LLC, going to a corporation, coming out of a trust, coming out of an
I've
entity.
seen a lot of people make mistakes on this. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about mistakes that happen when you're doing quitclaim deeds. So we're going to go to commercial, but when we come back, I definitely want to talk about mistakes and things that people need to look out for to make sure that this doesn't happen to you, because you try to go to sell the property and you're not going to do it.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
stay tuned. We're going to go to commercial break, check out our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
At Title Brothers LLC, our mission is to give you the best closing experience anywhere in the country. Founded in 2020 by Adam Lohman and Josh Wiseman, here at Title Brothers, we're your one-stop shop for residential real estate, title insurance, title and escrow services, real estate closing, and due diligence services. While primarily located in South Florida, we also host dozens of closings throughout the state and even electronically as requested. To contact the Title Brothers, call us at 954-995-4988 or visit our website and get a quick quote today.
Whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, or building your dream home, you have a lot riding on your loan specialist. Max Fish, a top 1% mortgage loan officer in the nation, will give you a same-day qualifying quote. Max Fish is committed to providing his customers with mortgage services that exceed their expectations. Ensuring that you make the right choice for you and your family is his ultimate goal. Contact Max Fish today at 954-729-6933 or max.fisch@nwmcorp.net.
You have been watching Making Money with Laura. For more information, contact Laura Sanders at 954-650-0827 or visit her website at theloracell.com. And now back to the show.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. Today we're talking about title. We're talking about ladybird deeds, we're talking about quick claiming, we're talking about things that can create a big havoc on selling your property, and we want to make sure that you don't have these problems so we can save you the money, the trouble, the hassle. And today we have with us Nicholas Fiorello with JK Closings. He is an attorney that does title work, and he is going to tell us that he can help you make sure you don't make these mistakes. People a lot of times want to take the cheaper chicken, and for $350, that sounds pretty reasonable to me. What's the best way that people can get a hold of you if they wanted to do, some prepping to make sure that their property doesn't get lost in probate?
A couple different ways. You can go to our website. First of all, we have a very informative website, jkclosings.com, that has a in-depth analysis on different deeds, quitclaim deeds, ladybird deeds, the impacts and benefits and disadvantages of that. You can call the office. I'm very available, as you know.
Yes.
Anytime you need to call, if I'm not available, I'll call you right back. Okay. And my email, all three I can answer. And
what's your email?
nick@jkclosings.com.
Okay, great. So we were talking about ladybird deeds. That's definitely like a little way to not have to go through probate with a property primary. Like if you have no money in the bank, right, you should definitely have your primary, rather than having it in a trust, have it into a ladybird deed. If you don't have any money in the bank, you really don't have anything other than your property,
yeah, if there's
right?
no other assets, then
Yeah.
you can have it, and that'll help you estate plan and eventually avoid probate.
Now, another thing is let's just say you live in like Washington, right? Chicago, California, and you have an investment property in Florida. You should definitely have that investment property in a ladybird deed to go to somebody, because in that particular instance, you wouldn't have to open up a probate.
Yeah.
Because if you have nothing else here, if all your bank accounts are in Chicago, wherever you're at, Washington, wherever it is, you're going to open a probate in that state. So most people don't understand there's going to be a probate separate in Florida versus a probate in another state. So that's a good way to kind of circumvent the system. So a lot of people, I don't think they even know what a ladybird deed is. And I just learned today by talking with you, I thought a ladybird deed was available in every state. So
No, not at all.
So tell us a little more about that.
Florida is one of the few states that allow, it's not necessarily a transfer on death deed, that's a little different. And most states don't allow that, but it has the same effect. Basically what happens when somebody does a ladybird deed, they put the property into a life estate, meaning that they have the property until they die, and when they pass away, it automatically transfers to the remainders they designate.
And that could be anybody.
Yeah.
Could be their gigolo. I'm just kidding.
It could be anybody. It's a benefit of living in Florida. It's one of the, I mean, on top of the multiple other benefits, the weather, the, you know, income tax, no income tax, and all that stuff.
And when you get something in a ladybird deed, it's considered an inheritance, so there is no tax up to like whatever a few $1,000,000 that is.
There's
right?
no gift tax when you do a ladybird deed. When you execute a ladybird deed, you're not gifting anybody the property while you're alive. You're gifting it to them upon your death. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a great benefit.
I learned that too recently. So that was, you know, listen, every day you're learning something new. So, you know, the purpose of this is to get this across to people so that they know what they can, you know, do with their properties. So maybe you can tell me a little more about this. So years ago, I had a situation where the lady had bought a property in 1992. In 1993, she decided to transfer the property into her trust. However, I guess title was different back in the 90s, in the early 90s versus now. And the title policy, that broke the chain of the title policy, which I thought was interesting. Maybe you don't know anything about this, and I'm just throwing this out here, and I know I'm just throwing you under the bus here. But what I found was interesting is, I guess somewhere along the way, title changed, where they broke the chain, and I guess one of the people that had passed never signed it. Like, they had passed later on. They had never signed it, but they were dead. So now we had to go back to the kids. And of course, the kids didn't talk. And I actually found the daughter, and the daughter's like, well, I don't talk to him. And we need both of the kids to sign off on this. And it was because there was a legal description was wrong on the property. And title insurance was like, we're not covering this because there's a break in title when she changed it from when she bought it to her trust. So does that still happen now, or is it a little different now?
It still may happen, but it depends if the deed was executed correctly. That goes back on our mistakes we were talking about.
Deed wasn't recorded correctly the first time around.
Yeah. So
in
then,
92.
Then you have an issue.
Right.
You know, legal description's a big thing that people.
They should have looked at that when they were doing
They should've.
her trust.
Yeah, and then that's a huge issue that can come up later. I see it all the time when people try to do their own quitclaim deeds. They, you know, that's just one of the big mistakes. They sometimes record them because the counties will record them, and there's not witnesses on them, or there's not correct witnesses, or the person that they're deeding the property to is a witness, which is not allowed because they're interested in the property. So, you know, and there's all these kinds of ways where you can.
I know my name's all over the place when I'm in a closing. Like, I'm like, I know nothing.
Yeah, I mean, there's all these ways you can break the chain of title, which might not affect you now, might not affect your kids or whoever you name as a remainder or whoever you deed the property to. It might happen a couple years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later. And the longer it goes back, the harder it is to clear. Because then you run into issues where, you know, people aren't alive. You can't get a signature like this instance.
Which that kind of just on a side, right, to bring this in, co-ops, right? So in my lifetime, your lifetime, we've never seen co-ops come due on their land leases.
Yep.
Do you recommend if somebody comes into you to buy, do you say try to stay away from co-ops because we're getting closer to that time frame where they're going to come due now?
I mean, I'm not going to recommend that they don't because I want them to do what they want, but yeah, it comes with an inherent risk.
Listen, the way I look at it is like this, right? Let's just say you're getting a property on the Intercoastal. If it was in a co-op, because in New York, everything's a co-op, right? But here, it's a little different when co-ops, right? If you're getting a property on the Intercoastal and the co-op costs $200,000, right? Let's just say, because you can get one on the Intercoastal for like $250,000, right?
Definitely.
You could have gotten for $100,000, like,
maybe
but it's
even
changing. But maybe
70,
it's like,
60
let's
before.
say $30,000. Let's $300,000 now, right? You get a nice condo right on the. I mean, you're right there on the Intercoastal, right? And to buy that same thing that's either a condo with that direct view is like $700, right? So you're paying $300. So if you were to say, okay, take my other $350 and invest it, right? And in 30 years, it's no good anymore, but I'm making money on my investment, it would be a wash even if it became worth nothing, right? You're getting a property for less money because there is that potential. Now, the question is, you know, I guess, I mean, we just don't know. And it's kind, and I have people ask me questions all day long about co-ops, like, what do you think? What do you think? And I'm like, we're getting so close to that 100-year mark now, 99, 90-year mark.
Definitely.
And I think there has to be a certain amount of time left in order for it to be given a mortgage. A lot of them, you can't do a mortgage at all.
Most of them are cash. Most
Right.
of them are cash purchases.
Or a portfolio loan, which we can definitely talk about portfolio loans, coming up next time. But, you do warn them about that, right?
It's definitely a risk to go into that because you're owning a right to the entity who owns the land versus owning the land. So yeah, when you're older, maybe you don't have that many more years left on, and then maybe it doesn't really matter. A lot of the time I see a lot of older people buying, and it's a cheap alternative. But for a young person, you can't deed out of that. You can't deed out of a co-op. You need to get approval from the association, just like you did.
Well, just like a condo, though.
Yeah.
It's not like New York where they have to like you, and
Well,
it's a little different there. They have to like you. Like you have to be of certain status.
Yeah, of course.
So any other things that you want to, because we're running out of time, but anything else you want to talk about with title that you think is super important when you're doing a quick claim or, doing a ladybird deed? Anything you want to recommend to our listeners out there?
I think it's very important when you are thinking about doing a quitclaim deed to think about whether you want to just deed the property out of your name, whether that goes into an entity or a trust. Some people with a high portfolio, big time estate, they might want to put it into a trust versus a ladybird deed, because then the trust will, direct on how to get rid of all assets, including the real estate. But like you said earlier, if we don't have that much in our portfolio, maybe a ladybird deed's a quick, easy, convenient. You can get it done in one day.
But if you have a trust, do you still need to go through probate?
The trust is the vehicle for how your estate is distributed. So that's where the trustee has to follow the rules of the trust, and that explains everything you need to do in that case.
So you don't need to go through probate?
It depends on the estate. Every estate's different,
right?
Because there might be stuff that the trust doesn't account for.
And does every attorney charge a percentage of the estate, or is
that's different per estate attorney? So
okay.
I don't know what they charge.
I'm just curious if that, if that's all negotiable.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
It depends on the attorney.
Negotiate.
Always negotiate. Always negotiate.
So want to thank you for having you today.
Thank you.
Just want to remind my audience that if you're thinking about selling your home and it's not looking its best, and you think that you want to get it looking a little bit better, but you don't have the money, don't worry. We'll do a 0% loan for you. Second mortgage, get that house ready, and we have the contractors to make it look its best. So give me a call at 954-650-0827. Did I tell you that it was 0% interest? Give me a call. Laura Sanders, RE/MAX Direct. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for tuning in for Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. To join the conversation, call us at the studio, 888-994-4995 Studio A, or contact Laura directly at 954-650-0827. Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. We look forward to seeing you next week.